This is just disgusting. Jesse Waters, I'm going to play a clip for you of him on today's edition of Fox News' The Five. He says something so outrageous that even his MAGA co-hosts are shocked and quickly verbally go, whoa, 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 don't say that. And while it's notable because of this being such a huge platform and the specific example I'm showing you being gross, okay, that justifies talking about it. But there's also this pattern that is emerging. So we'll talk about that after this.
This is where the president has his most impact. You have a lot of room to maneuver there as commander-in-chief. We don't know who she is. We don't know what she believes. She's going to get paralyzed in the Situation Room while the generals have their way with her. Right now,
Jesse Waters.
Jesse, I don't like that.
Figuratively,
Take
again,
it back.
have their way with her, control her, not in a sexual way.
And you hear Gutfeld in the background. And the lower third chyron you saw was in reference to the pullout of Afghanistan, today being the 3-year anniversary. And we'll be talking more about that tomorrow. We have a segment coming up tomorrow where we'll be diving into some of the talking points, and just never ceases to shock me how willing people are to exploit tragedy, right, for political purposes, to further a political point. So we'll address that tomorrow. But to what he was saying there, part of me wants to start arguing with it, right? Oh, no, let me talk about all these qualifications of Kamala Harris and how she'd be incredible at making decisions in the Situation Room. But then you realize, wait, that's giving too much credit almost to the argument, taking it seriously, right? And that I don't want to do. But of course, his mind goes to that phrase, and it's pretty nasty. Here is more.
That would be great. You know, like your sister does something and you're like speaking on behalf of the Waters family. I'm sure my mother was probably go on MSNBC tonight and said, my son, Jesse Waters, made a joke about Kamala Harris being manhandled by generals in the Situation Room, and he has desecrated the memory of our grandfather, and it's disgusting. I could see my mom doing that, and I wish I had a political dynasty so I could take shots as well.
We appreciate that. All right,
And what he's referring to there is, if I can get this pulled up, pieces like this from the Los Angeles Times. Ignore my brother Bobby, Max Kennedy says, and you have a bunch of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s family members coming out and saying RFK Jr.'s endorsement of Trump is horrifying, is disgraceful, and is not something that many of his family members endorse. But again, the pattern that's emerging with these Fox hosts and with Trump saying things about Kamala Harris that are so out of pocket, for lack of a better phrase, so disgusting, worthy of condemnation, and just not substantive, and they're specifically misogynistic. The reason that they have to go to those is because of the way that her candidacy, it just seems to be breaking their brains. They had a series of dishonest talking points that worked effectively, it seemed, unfortunately, with Biden. That they would levy his way, that would harm his political prospects. We're not seeing that with Kamala Harris. The more they go low, the more she seems to surge in the polls. We talked about moments like this one.
You that the DEI vice president is the future of the party here, and so the future looks kind of dim for the Democrats here, but this is no shocker either. Kamala Harris, she's the original Haktua girl. That's the way she got where she is, and the party's going downhill if it's in her hands.
That was tough.
Another example of the Fox hosts being grossed out by what one of their fellow people were saying. But the hopeful, as crazy as it is to say this, the hopeful part of seeing them so desperately say stuff like that is twofold. First, clearly they don't have or are not good at delivering better, more substantive, more compelling attacks. So they have to go to stuff like that. But the second is that it does seem to be backfiring, and I think people who might be on the fence hear stuff like Jesse Waters making that remark, or whoever that guy was saying that, and actually become more likely to support Kamala Harris because of it. And just as one recent example, when you dive into the specifics of the different demographics that are being polled, we got this recently.
Polling from voters of tomorrow show Harris beating Trump by a whopping 32 points among those 18 to 29 years old in 7 battleground states. This is as of Tuesday. 54% said they would vote for Harris. 22% said they would vote for Donald Trump.
I do think, just given the progress that has been made and the environment that people are growing up in, quote unquote, my generation or younger people who are coming into voting age, deciding if they're going to vote, I think the ability to win them over with bigotry is far diminished, which is good. We see this one generation after another. Hopefully, people are becoming less and less bigoted. And thus that little part that you can tap into for a lot of people, that hateful part of their heart, is much smaller for a lot of the people who are young voters. And so, while again, I want you all to know, especially if you're stumbling across this, you're sort of a centrist or a little bit conservative, know that even though I am super aligned with a lot of Kamala Harris's policies, I still, just as a political, thinker, could come up with a lot of better ways to attack her. If I were a strategist for a Republican, I could think of a lot of better ways. It is true, despite all the dishonesty that gets wrapped up in the argument from Republicans, the border is a better place to attack her. She did get some responsibility. Wasn't that borders are a term they keep rolling out, but she had responsibility in stemming the flow, and a lot of progress has been made on that, and a lot of misnomers are brought out to make the Republican argument. But again, that's a better place to go after her on. Or pointing to current economic pain, even though by the major metrics the economy is doing really well, pointing to examples of prices going up, even though there's a context for that and Trump's participation in it. But that is also a better, more reasonable political argument. But these personal attacks, not the way to go. And so I'll continue to say, keep going down this road at your own expense, essentially. But Jesse Waters mentioned that his mom, that she is probably going to denounce him for what he said. A reminder that this was his mother.
Congratulations, honey bun. We are so proud of you and your accomplishments, and you've worked so hard. Now let's aim to have you keep your job. And to that end, I do have some suggestions.
Okay.
Do not tumble into any conspiracy rabbit holes. We do not want to lose you, and we want no lawsuits.
Okay.
Use your voice responsibly to promote conversation that maintains a narrative thread. There really has been enough Biden bashing, and the laptop is old. Perhaps you could suggest that your people take less interest, for example, in other people's bodies, and talk about that.
Yeah, so she was iconic for that, but he went on to do all the things she said not to. Conspiracy, rabbit holes, the attacks against, it was Biden then, but now Harris, that are often dishonest. And, this whole discussion, because it's a bigger thought there, let me play a few more clips because I know you want to see these, then I'll go down that road. So here's another example of Jesse Waters' recent coping with the Harris candidacy.
Is either childish, that person has mommy issues, or they're just trying to be accepted by other women. And I heard the scientists say the other day that when a man votes for a woman, he actually transitions into a woman.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's what the science
that's
says.
science. That's science.
Yeah, so it's always wrapped up in, I'm sort of kidding, but at the center of that, the reason that's a joke he would think of is because of a genuine belief that somehow voting for a woman is not something a man does. And Jesse Waters knows something about being a man's man, okay? And I do want to show you this too, Jessica Tarlov channeling during a recent bit of coverage, what we all feel when we hear Jesse Waters talk.
More money from the government to support them because they're going to be better off. And that's how the ROI on that works, for instance. The $25,000 for your down payment, I know that people, the landlords, people are trying to sell their apartments, are going to increase the price by $25,000 there as well. She's acknowledged that it's good for them, and it's also good for the buyer to be able to get on the property ladder. And when she talks about home ownership, which is something that we all aspire to, right, Jesse?
I wasn't paying attention. What did you just say?
You're really an incredible jerk sometimes. Anyway.
Indubitably. And then what I wanted to say was, I have this a lot. I know I share this with you kind of often, but so consistently, I come into work bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking maybe the world has changed while I was asleep for those hours, and I won't be greeted with just complete and utter dishonesty and disgustingness. And we can start having really thoughtful, comprehensive conversations about very complex subjects, right? And so a good example, because this was the topic they were starting with when Jesse Waters made that point, is the Afghanistan conversation. We could engage, and we should engage, in thoughtful, level-headed conversations about the United States' foreign policy. And in those, you're going to have smart people who are really well informed. You're going to have people disagreeing and making different arguments. And then we should try as a collective, as a group, to come to the best conclusion and then govern accordingly. But a lot of times, as I sit down, open up the different, sites and stuff that we use to prepare for the show, and am confronted again with the same people saying the same stuff, especially MAGA media, but I even come across people across the political spectrum that I'm just thinking, oh gosh. And while obviously I'm not actually seeing or hearing people shout, it's a collective shouting that's going on. And everything gets oversimplified. Everything becomes a talking point and a narrative. And we have to, because this is what's super newsworthy. We have to engage with people saying stuff like what Jesse Waters is saying, instead of talking about, even an example is what Jessica Tolov was talking about, the different proposals and thoughts on how to help people purchase houses. But then you see Trump talk and you're like, okay, we're not having a thoughtful political conversation. Let's go ahead and spend some time addressing just how ridiculous what Trump is saying is, or what Jesse Waters is saying. And that bums me out. Every day I experience that. Love my job. That's the one part of it, about it that I don't like, is knowing how many beautiful, thoughtful conversations are out in the abyss that we could be having if more pressing weren't the nonsense we engage with on a daily basis. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily and support this show, you can do it by clicking the join button below.